The Kansas City Chiefs dropped their third game of the year in Jacksonville on a Monday night. Now looking at 2-3. We're going to get into a lot of Chiefs football in this episode. MIZZOU has probably the best week out of the entire schedule to have a bye week with all the top-ranked teams losing over last weekend and head in to play Bama at Bama on Saturday morning at 11 a.m. It is an action-packed week for football in Missouri in general, Kansas City area, as the Lions come to town to play the Kansas City Chiefs this Sunday night. Me and EDJ are going to look at that. So welcome back to the Pop Show Knows podcast, EDJ, and welcome back to all of you that are finally tuning in to another episode of the Pop Show Knows podcast. How are you doing, EDJ?
How you doing, buddy? You had to wait for me because, obviously I'm the one that carries this show anyway. So,
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's good to be back. We hadn't done it for a while, so we've got a lot to talk about, a lot of different things to cover. One thing we didn't talk about in our fancy pre-meeting, of course, we didn't talk about baseball. We might sprinkle that in here at some point. But we got to talk about the pressing things at hand, what's going on with the Chiefs, how we feel, and how we feel heading into Sunday. And I think we might even track back a couple of weeks to talk about maybe a little bit of the Ravens and obviously the Jags and what happened there, and the Lions as well. But let's start with obviously the most pressing and current in our mind, the Jags game. Maybe not as bad as Mariota passed on interception to himself for a touchdown, but definitely up there in terms of just kind of very head-scratching ways to end a football game for the Chiefs. It kind of felt like, towards the end of the Alex Smith run where, oh boy, just one of those seasons where anything happens that against us at this point. You have the Travis Kelce. If he catches that ball in the end zone against the Eagles, they probably 95% win that game. Yeah. The Chiefs played better in the first half in the Chargers game. They beat the Chargers probably pretty easily. And then you look at this game, the annoying part is the offense looked great.
Yeah.
They almost 500 yards of offense, or close to it, I think.
I think so. Mahomes over 300 at 318.
300 yards for the first time in a long time. So, a lot of great things to look at in this game, other than, the interception. 476, okay. I was going to say it was pretty close. A lot of great things to look at in terms of offensive production, but now you're kind of leaning towards a defense that is kind of struggling, and they played great against the Ravens and they played great against the Eagles, but, if you're giving up a lot of points to the Jaguars, well, I take that back. I guess technically they didn't give up one touchdown because it was a pick six. So really they gave up 21 points more or less. But when it mattered, and I've seen this, and we'll get to what you think here in a second, but we've seen this, and a lot of people are criticizing Patrick for that interception off of the Devin Lloyd. It ended up pretending to be a fake blitz zero, ended up being dropped back. But the Chiefs overcame that, if you recall. The Chiefs drove right back down and scored. So if you make a mistake, you got to overcome it, which they did. So what is I guess we'll start with that point. What is your main take from that? Because people are critical of that interception. But if you remember, the Chiefs scored the next drive, I think. So at the end of the day, they made a mistake, but they overcame it.
I think it's kind of a twofold answer of a lot of people have been criticizing Patrick's effort to then go make the tackle, which I think is an interesting take, right? I think it's an interesting take just because I get it. I see it.
Hold on. Before you can get right back into that. Did we not watch him take the ball from the Giants defender during the fumble? If we're gonna complain about Patrick's effort, just stop it. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, no, you're totally good because that's exactly where I was gonna go with that. You hit it right on the head. I was driving this morning and listening to 810, and that was the discussion they were having this morning of October 9th, and I thought, yeah, okay, that's getting nitpicky is what I'm trying to get at, is I think it's nitpicky. It is what it is. You could criticize Thornton for not actually making the tackle, but at that point, I mean, they're right there on, if he would have tackled him, they would have been on, the 5-yard line somewhere, close, very close, probably end up scoring a touchdown. Don't know, but I think going for the turnover off the turnover would be better. I mean, imagine he strips that ball away, they land on it, and, you get a net loss of 80 yards or whatever it is on that play. But, I mean, at the end of the day, we talked about it before we got on here, and Juju was open. It was a simulated blitz. The linebacker pops back out. Patrick never saw him. I mean, it is what it is. But I do think the overwhelming takeaway is what you said at first, is, hey, this offense is moving the ball, and they battled through adversity. They made a mistake. They came right back and scored a touchdown. And I think that is worth more than anything from this game, honestly, is the fact that, okay, we are watching the offense battle adversity and overcome it. Obviously, they weren't able to overcome it on that last drive, being down by 3, and they weren't able to get down the field. So I do think that's a little bit of the difference of the offense maybe like 5 years ago, the Tyreek Hill, prime Travis Kelce offense that was, apparently a super team, which, whatever. That could be a whole debate in itself, which, I mean, kind of, sort of, but you're talking about one receiver, one tight end anyways. That's a whole nother conversation of just things that I've seen online. But, I think that is the difference, though, between this offense and that offense before. But we're also still missing Rashee Rice on that football field for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think that, a lot of people were like, oh, this team's not going to get better. This is who this team is the first couple weeks of the season. And, we're over here saying, hey, there's no Xavier Worthy on the field. There's no Rashee Rice on the field. All of a sudden, Worthy gets back on the field. This is a completely different offense. You saw it in the Baltimore game, and you saw it Monday night in the Jacksonville game, I think. Once you add Rashee Rice back to the mix, I think this offense gets even better. This is going to be a dangerous offense in this league. I do 100% believe they got the left tackle situation figured out. I mean, from this game, I do take, it's a mixed bag, I think, from this game. I don't think the Chiefs played a bad game. I think they made some critical mistakes in some critical moments. And, that last play of the game, you mentioned the Mariota play. If this was a playoff game, I would say, yeah, it's probably worse than the Mariota play almost. But it being a game in October, it doesn't hurt as much. I mean, I legitimately just laughed. I was sitting watching the game with Ray, and as soon as he got up and I realized no one was going to get to him, I just started laughing because, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. You cannot make it up. I mean, the man fell down, tried to get back up, fell down again, got back up and ran in for a touchdown. I mean, it's hilarious. And I know we talked about before we went on about kind of the Chris Jones effort on that play. And, I don't know. Whatever the philosophy is, if you're going to let them score there, I don't understand that philosophy at that point in the game because there's 30 seconds left. The Jags have no timeouts. Letting them score seems, I don't know. Do you really believe in the Jacksonville offense that the score right there is inevitable, that they're going to score 3 seconds left? I don't know if I feel like that about the Jags offense. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know if you just let them score there. So, because do you believe in this Kansas City offense that much to, I get it's Patrick, but again, I think it goes back to kind of what we saw at the Kingdom documentary where me and you have talked about this, about D-Hop kind of saying in that documentary, we put too much on Pat at times, and it does kind of seem like this team does believe Patrick Mahomes is a superhero, and that's fine because, I mean, by all accounts he is to a point on the football field, but at the same time, I mean, just I don't know. We're somewhere in between. Like, I think that we all, and even the team, have this kind of thought that this is a mythical figure of Patrick Mahomes, where it's like, let's just get back to playing football. Like, let's play football. Like, I get it that we have on offense what we perceive as like Michael Jordan in the 90s in the NFL right now, and from a player standpoint, that's a bad way to look at it, if I'm being honest, is kind of what I'm trying to get at. Us, the fans, the media, everybody alike, we can feed into that, right? But I think if you're in the locker room, I don't think that that's a great thing to feed into, if that makes sense, I guess. But, my takeaway is this team will be fine. It's October, and like we talked about before, this team just kind of reminds me of the team we saw 2 and 3 years ago. And I mean, I just remind everybody that the Chiefs won the Super Bowl both of those years. So, I mean, there was a time where the Chiefs a couple of years ago lost to the Raiders on Christmas Day. And me personally, I honestly wasn't 100% sure if the Chiefs were even going to make the playoffs that year. I mean, I think Denver was closing in on the division. They needed like 1 or 2 more wins, and they would have overtaken the Chiefs. That was, I think, that tough Denver loss on the road was during that year, where Sky Moore drops a wide open touchdown. Sorry for the stray, Sky Moore, but I'm just not that worried. I'm not that concerned. I'll take that back. I'm concerned slightly, but I'm not worried, if that makes sense. So, I mean, that's my main takeaway from the game. I would say a long-winded answer there for you, EDJ. What about you? What's your main takeaways?
No, I agree with you. I think offensively there's less concern than there was, especially the past 2 weeks for sure. Maybe a little bit of the third week or 3 weeks ago in the second half. I think the offense has kind of figured it out a little bit. You saw Pacheco run the best he's run since the leg injury. I thought he looked strong. He looked confident. Worthy seems to be doing fine. He had that little ankle injury, but he came back in, so that was good news there. It's just, and someone brought this up on the radio, I think it was, we all know eventually the defense plays better. That's the hope, right? And that's kind of what we hope for. The good news is that we get Rashee Rice back in a couple games before the Bills. So we'll get to see Rashee play a couple games, and then he'll play Buffalo, or we'll play Buffalo, rather. So, there's still a lot of things that we just don't know about the Chiefs. The one thing we do know is Patrick's playing some great football, the best he's played in a couple of years. And the offense looks to be more confident. So, I mean, the things that we were worried about 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago are at least starting to subside a little bit. You talk about, they look in shambles on offense. Well, they did. They don't really look that way anymore. They look like they know what they're at least doing. We talked about that weeks ago. We said, no, it doesn't even look like they know what they're doing. But they at least have seemed to figure that out. Travis seems to be a little bit more sure of what he's doing, which is great. And I think Worthy coming back helps a lot, because I think Travis can't do the one-man show anymore, which is fine. He's 35, 36. That's fine. But, at the end of the day, when you have confidence in the Chiefs, you have confidence in Andy, you have confidence in Patrick, and you have enough confidence in Spagnuolo to know that he'll figure it out eventually. So, am I like I'm with you? If it's a 1 to 10, I'm about a 4.5 right now. It's starting to creep into concern, but if you look at the AFC, the only great team right now, quote unquote great team, are the Bills, and they're 4-1, and they just lost to the Patriots, who are actually pretty damn good. If you look at them, I think they'll be a sleeper. But nobody's really sticking out. I don't look at this league and go, man, they're the best team in football. I mean, technically, you can look at a team and say, well, they're the best team in football, but are they? I mean, it just seems like the league's really close together. I don't know. But how have you felt over the past couple of weeks? Obviously, it's been a while since we've been able to talk about it. With the overall offensive production, I've been very pleased with how they've been able to move the ball. Obviously, the Ravens were hurt and banged up, but it just hasn't seemed like that's mattered the past couple of years. But the Chiefs took advantage of that. They played really well against the Jags. Second half against the Giants looked good. So what's your takeaway from the offense? What do you feel like? It seems like Andy's gotten his big play sheet out again and just kind of said, you know what, Matt, I got it. And I think it shows but bigly that Andy has kind of said, we'll figure this out. I got it.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think they're starting to click. I think that the offense is starting to kind of, those wheels are starting to churn. They were a little rusty at the beginning of the year. I think that you're right. I think that Andy probably, did, just kind of say, hey, look, we gotta get this thing going and moving. We can't put it all on our defense. And I do think that it helped that they played a Ravens defense that's been one of the worst in the league this year. and into this Jags game, and the Jags defense has been better, than most of the season. I don't know what the rankings are, but I do know they've caused the most turnovers in the NFL, and they caused one on Mahomes on Monday night with that interception. But other than that, I mean, they played good, clean football. I think my biggest concern right now that goes offense and kind of spreads to the defense, and this is why I kind of key in on that play by Chris Jones at the last play of the game, is Travis Kelce has shown a huge lack of effort this year. And even in this Jags game early on, that early third down where he just kind of throws one hand at the ball, and then you see on the replay, because live I thought, where's the flag? Obviously Travis Hunter's got a hold of that right arm, or it would be around to catch the ball. And then you see the replay, he doesn't. Kelce just decided not to put his right hand up as well and just kind of bat the ball down with his left hand. And it's those kind of plays that I feel like kind of creep in. And these are your leaders. I mean, Travis Kelce is one of the leaders of the team. And you consistently have your quarterback bailing you out in press conferences and, saying, well, I got to place the ball better. After the Eagles game where he said, I got to place the ball better. I mean, I don't know. I feel like through the season, it's only so much of that I can take to where it's like, man, Patrick, just burn these guys in the press conference. Like, I get it. I get it. You got to be the leader. You got to be the team player. But, man, you put the ball in the perfect spot and he gave it to the defense. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
We all saw it. And so I worry about that creeping over to other leaders. And, i.e. Chris Jones on that last play of the game that ended up being the game-winning touchdown. So that's probably my biggest concern overall, I think, with this team.
I agree with you. I think it is a leadership problem. Outside of Pat, I mean, it just seems like Patrick understands that, being a leader is taking the blame, even though when you shouldn't. He's always been great at that. I haven't really sat, and I don't listen to a bunch of press conferences, so I can't say not every press conference he's ever done has been great. But, I've never heard a clip of him say, or, have people say, well, boy, he really throws so-and-so under the bus. He's never done that.
Yeah.
It's just who he is. But he should, it's just like, and I think you've kind of seen it a little bit. I think he's annoyed with Travis. I think he's been annoyed with how he's acted and, for whatever's going on with Travis outside of the very distracting, obviously, engagement and things like that. But, I think there's definitely been a rift there. You can kind of tell because when he's been asked about Travis, he said, well, you'll have to ask him about that. So I don't think we've seen that in the past, but, we'll get over it. They're both adults. We'll get over it. But
and he's still targeting him a lot, so it's not like it's like this Cold War going on in the offense. Because I do kind of agree with you to a point. And even the fact that a couple weeks ago, listening to the radio, they played a clip of Kelce talking about, we've got to do better. And they pointed it out and keyed in on that because they were like, if this was Patrick on the mic, it's I've got to do better. I've got to, and they want to, you want to hear that out of Kelce because at the end of the day, you are one of the leaders of this team. And, sometimes I think it's kind of funny because Mahomes is 30 now, I think, and you've got a 36-year-old that's kind of running around like a child right now. And I get it. He's not the player that he used to be. It's frustrating. Father time catches up with everyone. And it is frustrating. But at the same time, you got to hold it down for your team and, do what you can do. Obviously Kelce can't do the things that he did, even a few years ago. I think really the downslide came from, which is ironically the game that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, with the Detroit Lions, which I don't think he played in that game, right? Or did he make it back for that one? I can't remember. I know that we were missing Chris Jones due to the contract negotiations, but, he hyperextended his knee right before the season started that year. And I think the downfall has kind of been from that moment forward where Kelce's really taken a step back. And, it's totally fine. It's just, again, how you're affecting the locker room, how your temper tantrums on the sideline are affecting everybody else. And you have to, rein that in because I think we've seen that once out of Patrick Mahomes in the 8 years that he's been in Kansas City after the Buffalo game that everybody loves to talk about, the one time that he kind of just lost his mind about a play, which, hey, it's the heat of the moment and emotions are high and, it is what it is. But yeah, I worry how that affects the whole locker room.
Well, I think you've seen it. I think you've seen it a couple of times this year where it just seems like Travis's frustrations have kind of worn off on people. You saw it with Jones and Tranquil week one. And I don't think that was with Travis. I think it was just whatever Chris and Drew were going through. Um, so I think and someone said it best on the radio, for the first time in really the Patrick era, you're seeing kind of the cracks in the facade, right?
Yeah.
You're seeing guys that are frustrated. You're seeing guys that are, I, I, I think they're kind of tired of what they've been doing the past couple of years. It's won them championships, but they feel like they're better than that. And obviously, well, they won 15 games last year. Well, they did, but it wasn't pretty.
Yeah.
10 of those were one-score games. So, it's not like they were blowing everybody out. So
and I think you see it with
you,
Patrick of throwing the deep ball. I mean, how many times has Patrick went out and throw the deep ball this year in comparison to the last couple of seasons? I mean, he wants to push the ball, and I think everybody does. To Andy, to Nagy, to Kelsey, Mahomes, Thornton, Worthy, everybody on that offense, they want to push the ball down the field. It's just how do you get there with the landscape of the way teams are running defenses now to protect against that kind of stuff, and the personnel that you have out there. They're in the best space that they have been in years, I think, to get that done. But I do agree with you that they're a little bit frustrated with what their offense has become.
well, I think we all were at one point, and I think it kind of shows. And in this Lions game, obviously the Lions defense isn't quite as good as it used to be. Um, Seems like they lost a lot of key factors, and they're just not. But Jared Goff and Jamari Gibbs and David Montgomery and Amon St. Brown and Williams and all those cats, they can all play some offense. I mean, this is a very good offense they're heading to take on in Kansas City on Sunday night. Um, if you're the Chiefs defense, if you're Spagnuolo, you enjoy film breakdowns and stuff like that, so you'll understand this more. What kind of coverages are you looking for against the Lions? Obviously, Spagnuolo's main strategy is take the number one guy away. The old Belichick method. Now you got to use your number two. And even Sam Laporta. I mean, this Lions offense is stacked from top to bottom. How do you handle something like that, especially with a team that's not as confident as they used to be?
I think it's. I mean, this is the biggest threat I think that they've had as a defensive unit going into this Lions game. I think that you have to mitigate the run game best you can. Two really good runners, Montgomery and Gibbs, and then you've got to deal with Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's your number one. And like you said, yeah, Spags likes to take out your number one with McDuffie. I think McDuffie's probably going to travel with Amon-Ra everywhere they go. The thing with the Lions offense that's tricky, and this is one thing that the Giants did very well at one point in the game, which it was ironically the pick that Russell Wilson threw, is they used motion to switch the coverage to where Jalen Watson had to take over Malik Neighbors and transition McDuffie off of him to the next guy, the way that they used the motion out of trips. And it ended up being underthrown and picked off by Jalen Watson. Jalen Watson also had a pretty bad night, I felt like, against the Jacksonville Jaguars on Monday night. I think that last drive, I mean, he got burnt like 2 plays in a row, and it was pretty rough. So something the Lions do very well is motioning and kind of messing up your coverages and messing up what you're doing pre-snap, and I think that they're going to use that a lot because also your next problem is Jameson Williams that you have in the pass game, and then you also have Sam Laporta. And I think that if anyone's going to have a big night, it's probably going to be Laporta because, how do you match up with that? I don't think that you can put Tranquil on him, at least for the whole game. Maybe Chamari Connor takes Laporta. I don't know if I love that matchup, but probably a better matchup than trying to get Tranquil to move with them. But, I think in a lot of ways that Chamari Connor is closer to the player like Drew Tranquil is already. So coverage-wise, I don't know. Do you try to get Jaden Hicks covering Laporta? There's, I don't know. There's a lot of nuance to that, and that's just in the pass game. So then you have to watch out for the run game, and I think that they have to be good at shutting down David Montgomery because I think that he's kind of a a locomotive of this offense, because you get David Montgomery on a couple of plays, and if he's, running 5 yards, 6 yards per carry like he does some games, then all of a sudden you get Jahmyr Gibbs to come in, and you're, okay, it's a pass play, and then Jahmyr Gibbs, you got the speedster, and they run some, zone running play, and all of a sudden it's a 20, 30-yard gain because you're expecting a pass. And then, there's just so many things they can do offensively that I think it's very tough to game plan for the Lions. And I haven't really looked at any of the Lions' film this year, because obviously you go from Ben Johnson to Johnny Morton, which, funny enough, I thought that was Johnny Morton that played for the Chiefs, different Johnny Morton going into the season. But I don't know, man. I think that, McDuffie travels with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Other than that, I mean, cross your fingers.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was at, on the assumption on what the game plan was for Sunday night. I mean, the Lions are very stacked, and I think people don't understand that, how good the Lions offense is. You basically have two starting running backs. And they use them pretty much 50-50. Then you have a fantastic receiver in Amon-Ra St. Brown. Then you have a fantastic tight end, Sam Laporta, and then Jameson Williams is your other receiver, who's very good as well. Then you have a Jared Goff who's confident as he has ever been outside of the Rams Super Bowl run. It's a dangerous combination. And the Chiefs have to be ready for it. And I feel like offensively they will be. Like I said, I think that the Lions' defense is not very good anymore. It doesn't show the same as it was 2 years ago or even last year. I think injuries and free agencies took care of a lot of those guys. My concern is Aiden Hutchinson, obviously. He's going to play a big factor in this game. But I thought, honestly, I don't know how you felt about this. I thought the offensive line played great against the Jags defense, who gets after the quarterback. Yes. So, I thought they played great. Everybody looked good. Juwan Taylor did have, I think, a penalty that was pretty big. But, same day, same earth.
Yeah, usually the normal.
But it seemed like the offensive line was up to the task against the Jags. Patrick made that insane, play where he was pretty much tackled and pushed himself up with one hand. But outside of that, I thought the line played great. It's going to be a different challenge with Aiden Hutchinson. He's phenomenal. I'll be interested to see who the Lions match him up with. If they decide to go left or right, I'll assume they'll probably go right, just for the matchup's sake. Well, I guess it'll depend, because he's technically is he D-end or D-tackle?
Who's that?
Is Hutchinson a D-end or a D-tackle?
He's an edge, yeah.
Okay, so he will probably go. I would assume, right, unless they push Simmons and test him on the left. You would think.
Yeah, I think he attacks Juwan Taylor most of the game. I think that's usually the side he's on. And then you've got Alquandine Muhammad on the other side, who's also playing pretty well. He's got a pressure grade of 86.2. And Hayden Hutchinson on the other side has a 92.9 pressure grade defensively. See, I would refute that. I think that the Lions' defense is pretty good. I'm kind of looking up just because I haven't watched a ton of them. But, I mean, they gave up 27 to the Packers. They gave up 21 to the Bears, 30 to the Ravens, 10 to the Browns, and 24. Well, yeah, you know what? I'm going to let you have that one. They haven't looked great this year.
They're not as good as they were.
Yes.
They used to be really good. They used to be a complete team. But now they're just mainly offensively. So, I think, we can both sum this one up pretty quickly for Sunday. Just don't let them outscore you. I think is my thing for Sunday. I mean, there's really not a whole lot you can do. I don't think you're going to hope that Spags can hold this whole offense to 17 or less. I don't think it's going to happen. But, the way the offenses looked, I hope it's another great game from Pat. I hope it's a great game from the offense. Worthy looked pretty decent again. Like we talked about a second ago, he had a little injury, but on that he was fine. Tyquan Thornton, man, he has really impressed me in a lot of ways. Obviously he had a couple of miscommunications at the beginning of the year, But it seems like he's kind of figured that out a little bit. And obviously Andy's scheme is hard to figure out and hard to learn, but he's learned quickly. I mean, he learned a lot quicker than I thought most people would. And he's has what 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns. So I mean, it's a work in progress, and Juju looks decent. Juju looks all right. So
I think Juju serves Juju's role.
he does, but I mean, I think he gets paid a little more money to go to a bad team and gets plays more.
Yeah.
So I think overall I think Juju is a good addition or a good roster bonus receiver, and still again I'm not necessarily. I think the Chiefs are actually favored in this game if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not necessarily worried. I think be prepared for a Rams Chiefs. I think this is going to be a fun one. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I think Chris Collinsworth will have a stroke in the booth. So I'm prepared for a fun one. I don't know about you, but I think it'll be pretty explosive.
I think the key for the defense is getting pressure on Jared Goff. If the Chiefs can get pressure on Jared Goff, I think that the defense has a chance to hold the Lions to maybe like 24. I think you're right. I don't think they're going to hold them under 20. I think it's going to be an offensive shootout. I don't want to subscribe to the notion that this is going to be Rams Chiefs all over again. What was it, like 54 to something? I don't think the Lions are going to put up 50 points on this Chiefs defense. I could be wrong because, like we talked about, I mean, there's a lot of things you got to worry about this Lions offense, but I do think that the Chiefs are going to be good enough. And I mean, I don't know. It is kind of tough with the defensive line. Defensive line is not great for the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chiefs are favored by 2.5 points in this game, so very close line. But what am I going to say here? Although 86% of the bets are on the Detroit side per PFF, it says. That's for the spread. Oh, that's for the spread. Okay, I see. That 57 for the money line is on the Chiefs anyways. What was I getting at? The offense of the Lions, there's a lot to worry about. If you can get some pressure on them, though, come with some strategic blitzes on some right downs, which I think that Spags can do. We've seen it time and time again. He's one of the smartest guys in football. Just he reads and reacts, and does a very good job. And also something I wanted to point out of, if I can get back to the stat where I was at, Jared Goff has only been blitzed 25.6% of the time. That ranks, I think, 18th it was. Yeah, 18th in the league right now. So, I don't know, maybe blitz him a little bit more, try to put some pressure. I think Goff is not great under pressure. If you can come up with some good, blitz packages, maybe bring corner blitz here and there. It just strategically done and get them off of the field as many times as you can. Because, they're probably going to score at least 3 touchdowns in this game at some point. And then the offensive side of the ball, you just got to find a way to attack. I think it's a very winnable game for the Chiefs. That was something that Ray asked me right after we were done watching the game of the Jaguars. I mean, the teams hadn't even come off the field. And was like, how do you like their chances against Detroit? I said, I like them. I think they're, the Chiefs didn't look bad on Monday night. And, they lost. It happens. It's football. And so I think moving to the Lions game, it's like, just keep that energy rolling and keep on, working the way that you're working. And I think that you're going to find these wins at some point.
Well, 12 penalties doesn't help, and 12 penalties, crucial penalties nonetheless.
Absolutely.
That very interesting special teams blocking call that I've never seen called a day in my life.
Dude, the holds on Cochran, dude, killed me.
Cochran was not great, but that one particular blocking call where I can't. It's a whole new kickoff rule, and I never heard it called. It's whatever, But
and Bucker continues to struggle pretty bad this year.
Yeah, I don't know what and they take the lead, and he kicks the ball out of bounds, and then Jags get at the 40-yard line.
That's a big part of the loss.
Yeah. You killed the vibe in the stadium, but then you gave it back.
Yep.
So Bucker's got to figure it out. I mean, his field goals were, 3 for 3 or whatever it was, 4 for 4, whatever it was. But, you got to finish, and execution was. I think execution is a good key for the game against the Jags. They just didn't have it. At the end of the day, they just didn't have what they needed to get it done. But and I think that's what gets lost on people. Well, they lost. How did they look good? They didn't look bad. They just lost. It's whatever. They just lost. Um, but at the end of the day, I think we're both in agreement. I think we're confident enough in what the Chiefs can do to get to where they need to go. I don't think the AFC West is all that strong. I mean, the Broncos beat the Eagles, but I think the Eagles gave that one away.
I don't think the Eagles are that good. I don't think
I
the
don't.
Eagles
Well,
are who
and that too.
people
I don't
think they
either.
are. Yeah.
I don't either. Yeah, I don't either. I agree with you. But I mean, the Eagles gave that one away. They should have won the game, but they didn't. But all in
Although I
all,
thought there was a lot of irony. My bad to cut you off. There's a lot of irony in the way that game ended. How Eagles fans were crying about the no call on the pass interference there at the end of the game, and I replied to some Chiefs account and I was like, "You just can't call that right there." And he quoted it was like Eagles fans after Super Bowl 57 and was like, "Yeah, I mean, right? You can't call that at that point in the game. You can't ruin the game with a penalty." So the irony of them losing off of that was pretty funny.
Well, irony is only ironic when you want it to be. So it's just so especially in football. But confident that on the edge heading into Saturday, one of the biggest games that Mizzou's had in a long time. Just in general, now they got all the way bumped up from, I think they were 19th to 20th, or now number 14, looking on just on the outside of the playoff bracket, playing Alabama. This is a big one, Bob Stroh. This. If Drink wants to make a name for himself, this is how he does it. He played Georgia twice, 2 years ago, then 3 years ago, or however long ago it was. Played them very well, but lost both of those. But now correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. This is not we played them really well, but we lost. No, you got to win this game.
I kind of agree with you. On that. About they do need to win this game. Oh, I was wrong. I'm mad I forgot that. This is at home. This is a home game. They don't have to go to Bama. Yeah, especially with it being at home, you got to win this game. I don't think that there's any ifs, ands, or buts. Like, you cannot go into this game and be like, oh, we lost by a field goal, or oh, we lost by a touchdown. Like, I don't think that is this game. I don't think that you can do that, especially the fact that I'm pretty sure they have to go at Oklahoma to Norman. I mean, this is the gimme of the schedule to have a big win, a very credible win on the schedule, and it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a tough game, and it's going to be one of those that we're going to be on the edge of our seats. Heart rate's going to be up. But even just looking at the power rankings, the PFF power rankings, you got the 7th. PFF has Alabama as the 7th overall ranked team in the power rankings. They have Mizzou at 10 in their power rankings. Defense 39th for Mizzou, 14th for Bama, and then second offense in the country per PFF is Mizzou to 9th against Alabama. The big thing is, can you run the ball? Can you beat Bama? Bama has one of the best run defenses in the country. Can they run on Alabama? And I think a lot of this game goes to Ahmad Hardy and how well he performs against this Bama defense, as well as, what's the backup's name? Roberts, I think, off the top of my head. Yeah, so I think a lot of Bo's success is going to come off of how well can you run. And, I think try to keep the ball on the ground, control the clock, play some old school football. Let's see some old school football. Run the ball, play action over the top, take your shots when you can. And this Alabama team is very beatable. We've seen it. Florida State beat Alabama week 1. We have seen it, and I think Missouri can do the same thing. But this, going back to what you said in the beginning, this has to be the game that you win. You cannot come out of this game and take the silver lining from this game. I just don't think that you've got some tough games in Vandy. You got a tough game on the road against Oklahoma. Like, if they are going to make the playoffs, I think they have to win this game if they're going to make the playoff bracket. What do you think, EDJ?
Yeah, I mean, this is as big as it gets, as early as it gets for the season. This is a huge one. We thought the South Carolina game was going to be a big test for them, and it was in a way, but I think Missouri showed they were up for the task.
Well, I think a lot of that, sorry to cut you off, but I think a lot of that South Carolina game adds to this, because you're right. It was the first big test of the season for Mizzou, and they beat them 29-20. They looked very good in that game, and now there's more of a what am I trying to say? There's just more on the Bama game now, because we know who this team is. We know this team is good enough to maybe make a playoff run, and now this game has to be a must-win. I think if they either look bad and barely win that game against South Carolina, or even lose that game against South Carolina, then I think this Bama game is more like, okay, let's stay competitive in the move. No, this has got to be a win.
Well, I think a lot of people in the media are behind Missouri. I think they like Mizzou. I think for the first time in a long time, they feel like Mizzou is very legit. I've heard a lot of people say that they're a very sneaky favorite to do something in the playoffs. So, they have to execute, and this has to be the game. And Ahmad Hardy, in my opinion, and I think maybe in some other people's opinions now, is he's definitely up there for Heisman consideration.
Yes.
He's playing his ass off.
He's got like 700 and some yards right now.
Yeah, and Bo has played well. He's struggled a little bit the past couple of weeks, but again, you're going to have struggles. I'd like to see him get back to what he was doing. Be a little more confident. But he can run very well. He does have that ability. Like I said, I agree with you. I think this needs to be an old school game. Run the ball, play defense. Don't try to overshoot the barrel here, and run out all these. And who knows what Dragowitz's going to come up with. It could be a completely different style, and Kirby Moore, what they're going to come up with together. It could be a completely different style and something we haven't seen yet. So this is a huge moment for them. Hopefully it gets executed. I feel like it will. I'm not sold on Alabama. I think they're definitely, not the best. They're good, obviously, but, I don't think they're as good as they think they are. And I've heard some people say, oh, this will be a cakewalk for Alabama. I certainly don't feel that way, and I don't think anyone else feels that way. I think this is a big test for Alabama, too. I think this kind of shows where they are as well. So, I mean, this is if you're watching a game Saturday, this is one to watch, not just for a Mizzou fan, but for an Alabama fan too, to see where you're at. So, I mean, I think this is the game of the week.
In general, I think this is a good game.
Yeah, this is the game of the week. I don't know if I have a true concern for Mizzou. They've kind of shown that they don't really have a true concern yet. I think defense obviously is always a concern, especially with Ty Simpson. He can run. And Alabama always has very professional schemes that are hard to cover all over the place. Ryan Williams is a phenomenal receiver. So it's going to be a challenge, and I think Missouri's going to have to figure it out. But at the end of the day, I think Missouri has a better team than Alabama. I think Alabama has bigger stars, but I think Missouri has a better team, and I think that's what's going to matter at the end.
Yeah, I think Missouri is the more put-together, well-rounded team. You know what I think a weird thing is, and tell me what you think about this, that I think is a weird advantage for Missouri, just kind of, I guess, mentally walking through the game in my head, of the fact it's at 11 a.m. I think that benefits Missouri. I think that, and me and you both know, we've been watching Mizzou football for 20 years, around in there. Something about primetime does not fit with Mizzou football. Unless it's against Kansas, it feels like every time Mizzou's in primetime in a big game, whether it was Nebraska back in the day, Oklahoma, Texas, any of these teams, it seems like Mizzou just comes up short in primetime. And I think that it being an 11 a.m. game, it's going to be a lot of rowdy fans in Columbia. That place is going to be rocking, and it's going to be early, And I don't know when Bama's flying in, if it's probably Friday night or Friday sometime. You got to get up early, get to the stadium, and I get it. It's college football. It's nothing different than any other week. But this is a huge game. I mean, to I know we're Mizzou fans here, but this is number 8 versus number 14 in a SEC conference game. It don't get much bigger than this, in October. So I think that gives Mizzou a little bit of an edge to play the early game. Let's get in here. Let's get this knocked out at 11 a.m. in Columbia. And I would feel a little bit more teeter-tottery, I think, if it was like this was a 7 p.m. game on a Saturday night on ABC and the whole country's watching. I mean, at 11 a.m., maybe it's a little bit less. And maybe Mizzou and Alabama deserves a primetime game like that, although I am looking at it right now. It will be on ABC, so it is a nationally televised game. But I don't know. It's just something about primetime Mizzou that doesn't always click, it feels like. What do you think, EDJ?
No, I agree with you. Other than that one year that they beat Oklahoma, when Oklahoma was number 1, it just kind of seems to slip them. I thought it was odd that it was the first game of the day. But if you're going to kick off the, college football week, what better way to do it? So, I would assume College Game Day is there. I would assume. I don't know where else they'd be. But there could be other big games out there. I'm sure there's some bigger ones. But, I mean, to me, and I think to a lot of people in the media, this is a huge game. Like you said, this is, 2 SEC-ranked teams that are biting for a playoff spot potentially. So, this has all the makings of a big one.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It says a Big Ten location. What I'm looking at right now, September 27th. This time around, number 2 Oregon will host number 7 Indiana. So the Game Day crew will be in Eugene, Oregon, which is funny. I was just in Eugene last week. I drove past their stadium. Their stadium is insane. It's an interesting place.
It's funny. I don't know if that's a bigger game. I don't know. I just it's a big game for Indiana. And everyone talks about how their coach has done a great job, and he really has. But I would say it's really a solo side big game for Indiana. I mean, they got to win that game, or else they're back to what they were. So I don't know.
I think it just depends on how you look at it. The optics. Obviously, we're Mizzou fans, so we're going to be partial to the SEC, and it feels like in college football, everyone's pretty partial to the SEC. I mean, I guess Big Ten is the other big one, but I kind of agree with you. I mean, I think the Mizzou and Bama might be a bigger game, but I guess you got number 2 versus number 8. Or number 2 versus number 6? What is Indiana?
What is 7?
Maybe 7. Is that what I just said?
I think so.
Yeah, number 7. So it'll be number 3 versus number 7, or you get number 8 versus number 14. So I kind of get it. I guess that'll kick off at 2:30 p.m. in Eugene, which it'll be a fun game too. Hey, we'll get to catch both of them. I just assume the Mizzou game will be close to the end by that point. I may not want to watch any more college football after the Mizzou game.
It'll depend for sure, yeah. Obviously, speaking of playoffs, baseball playoffs are in full swing, no pun intended, but they are indeed. How much have you caught, and how much are you interested in watching the Yankees lose? The Yankees are out. The Blue Jays, took care of them pretty easily. I was kind of surprised by how easily they did, especially since they're both AL East opponents. How's your feel? I mean, obviously, Toronto looks good. Detroit, and we haven't even talked about this. Cleveland came all the way back from, 3rd place in the Central to winning the Central and then losing in the wild card. So, to a team that should have won the Central and was the best team in the American League all year until the last month of the season, of course. I guess first things first, what was your take on Cleveland's miraculous run that ended up being short and the loss to the Tigers?
Yeah, that's insane.
that was nuts. You know, they were dead in the water, third place. Didn't look like they were going to go anywhere, and all of a sudden here they came and they won. I think 10 or 12 in a row, and caught the Tigers on a downslide and took the whole division. But then had to go back and play the Tigers and lost. So you know, is that obviously that just kind of seems like baseball to me. You know, that's the pure capitalism of baseball. You know, you can be as hot as a firecracker and then go to the playoffs and then lose. You know, so it just was Cleveland sandbagging all year, or did they just get hot at the right time? How do you feel about that?
I think they got hot at the right time. I think that it's kind of a tale as old as baseball, damn near, as you know, the fact that, yeah, you can win all these games against all of these teams and get super hot, and then all of a sudden you get plopped right in the middle of a series with a division rival that's got your number. I'd be interested to look in what their head-to-head record was through the year between Detroit and Cleveland, because you get there and you get the guy that you don't want, you know, like it's like the old wrestling sayings, like, oh, I don't want that guy in my bracket, of that kind of stuff. And I think that's really what happened there, and maybe even to the Red Sox. I can't believe the Red Sox. Honestly, I'll be 100% transparent. I have not watched a single moment of playoff baseball yet, and I was actually sitting here last night. Honestly, I've been captivated by the new skate game. I've been playing the hell out of it, and so I was sitting here playing that. And I was like, I should really turn on the playoffs and just watch, because, I mean, this is the best time of year. Playoff baseball is amazing to watch, so I'm going to really try hard tonight to get in on some games. It looks like we've got Brewers, Cubs, and Phillies, Dodgers today, which both series are right. We got the Dodgers up 2-1 and the Brewers up 2-1 right now to see who goes to the NLCS. But on the other side, I just saw the highlights from Boston and New York. I think game 1 where Boston won. So I'm kind of surprised that New York came back, won that series. And then, again, same difference. They get stifled by a divisional opponent in the Blue Jays and go straight to the ALCS. So I think we're set up for a really fascinating finish to the year. And I don't know, as a Cardinals fan, like, who I want to see less than any of these 4 teams really in the World Series. I'm not a fan of any of them. Maybe the Dodgers, which is such an unpopular take, that I would rather see them in the NLCS than anyone else, but I cannot stand Schwarber, and I don't like the Phillies, and I think that's really just personal bias off of the Cardinals getting swept by them the last time they were in the playoffs. Obviously, the Cubs are the Cubs. I never want to see them win anything. And the Brewers are annoying. So there's my take on the NL.
Well, it's funny because I think there should be Tigers Mariners tonight as well at 6:30, I think.
Okay.
It's either tonight or tomorrow night. Well, maybe tomorrow night then. But they have Game 5 as well. Well, they're probably traveling, so it probably is tomorrow night.
Yep, tomorrow.
Yeah. But yeah, I watched some of the.
I did hear on the radio in the next.
Yes, he is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I did watch some of the Dodgers Phillies game. The Phillies smacked the Dodgers last night, and yeah, I think the Brewers and Dodgers have been the best teams in the NL all year. So, I think that'll at least make sense for them to play each other in National League Championship. So naturally, both of them will lose. So it just depends. And the Yankees are out, so that's all I really care about. I enjoyed them not ever winning a World Series again. That'd be great. But it's like you said, it's the best time of year for baseball. Best time of year to enjoy it and just enjoy the game that people love to hate on for no reason, it seems like, but whatever.
I think that the only sport that compares to baseball when it comes to the playoffs is football. Yes. Because I don't know what it is, and I don't know if it's like the culmination of playing 162 where you feel like a lot of games don't matter, and then you get to the playoffs and it's like there's a microscope on every single pitch. Every single pitch is like, what's about to happen next? Anything can happen. And I mean, one of the greatest plays of all time, like two of the greatest plays in playoff history that we've ever seen, World Series history, are by our two favorite teams. Think of Alcides Escobar leading off the 2015 World Series with an inside the park home run. I mean, every pitch matters. You know what I mean? It was the very first pitch of the game, and he goes around the bases for a home run inside the park. The most exciting play in baseball, and all of a sudden, I mean, the World Series is set ablaze. And then you think of 2011, Game 6 of the NLCS. The Cardinals are done. They're down to their last strike. This World Series is over. And David Freese hits a triple that ties the game up. They end up going to Game 7. The Cardinals win. I mean, it's just... I feel like I'm cutting like a wrestling promo right now of just like one of them 90s ones, all coked up Ric Flair promo for baseball right now because it's so exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and I think that's where people get most of their excitement from baseball is the postseason,
Yeah.
And that's just what it seems like postseason baseball kind of captivates, your enjoyment for the season. Gosh, let's see. Football, baseball. What else we got?
I think that's about it. We'll talk about it for a minute just because I know you're a little bit familiar, but we've got almost this whole rundown knocked out. And speaking of knockouts, Ankalaev got absolutely destroyed on Saturday night by Alex Pereira. And I am upset at myself for not placing the futures bet I was going to place a month ago on Pereira to be a future world champion because I felt it coming. And I know I'm going to butcher Buddy's name, but Al, the manager, we all know who I'm talking about if you know what I'm talking about. The manager of like every fighter ever is what it feels like. He had some choice words and said something. I honestly don't even know the actual quote or anything. But Alex Pereira did not like that, didn't take kindly to it, and he went out there and he knocked his boy out in under a minute, and I think it was under a minute. It was glorious to watch. I mean, the leg kicks to lead up to it had Ankalaev on his back foot, switching his stance. I mean, you cannot take many leg kicks from Pereira. I mean, that dude is one of the best calf kickers in the game, and then he just opened up with the hands, and it was all over from there, really. I mean, he hit him with that one, and it was done. We saw the 12-6 elbows in play for the first time. Crazy. They're not as deadly as we thought they were at once when they were banned. It's just a normal elbow. And so we got to see that. Yuri Prohashka with an insane win. Go ahead.
So with the 12-6 now being welcomed back, or welcomed, whatever you want to call it, do you take John Jones's loss away?
No. Personally, no. If they went back and expunged it, okay. Then, I guess I don't care either way. How you want to look at it is however you want to look at it. But from my perspective as somebody that has gotten in a cage and fought, you know the rules. You go over the rules, you know the rules. You know those were illegal. You threw them anyways, and the guy couldn't continue. That's a disqualification. It is what it is. I mean, I that's kind of how I've always felt about it. It's a loss. He got disqualified, If you went out there and kicked the dude straight in the nuts 5 times, you wouldn't be like, oh, it was a fluke. He lost. He got disqualified. I think that's kind of where I stand on it. If they went back and retroactively expunged it, okay, then cool. We'll move on from it and, flip it to a no contest or something. But just personally, as somebody that has watched him fight, I've watched every single John Jones fight. He cheats in every single fight. He likes to poke guys in the eyes. That's why I uphold that loss and see it very much as a loss, just for the simple fact of dude's a cheater and he gets away with what he can get away with. I kind of hate the word cheater just because it's I don't know. What am I trying to say? It's kind of a wild one to throw out there. Maybe it's just because of football and everybody wants to say, oh, everybody's cheating and blah, 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 when it's just like bad officials. That word has just become tainted to me to call somebody a cheater. But, that's kind of how I feel about that. But like I said, if they went and expunged it, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I mean, but I just think the rules when you get in there. don't break him. It's pretty simple. I mean, there's that one time where he headbutted Shogun in the stomach, and I just thought, what a crazy thing to think of, which shows, just the level ahead John Jones always has been in the way that he fights. But at the same time, like, bruh, we all know headbutts are illegal. Like, what are we doing here? Like, oh, it's to the body. Like, it's still illegal. Like, I don't know. So that's how I felt about that, or feel about that.
Yeah, I feel like people are so, I think we're quick to not dismiss, but just feel like things need to be corrected. When Reggie Bush, with now players actually getting paid and legally over the table, Reggie Bush should get everything back. Well, I mean, I think he did, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, that was really against the rules back then. You couldn't do that. Obviously, everybody was doing it. Let's not pretend like it was just USC.
Right.
Everybody was doing it. But if you got caught, you were basically almost not a team anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's how much of history do you want to change for things that, were already in place. And I think we talked about when the NFL absorbed the AFL championships or whatever it was. This was a couple years back. But, do you want to count those as Super Bowls then? You can, but I mean, at the end of the day, that's not what it was. So I don't know. I feel like people are quick to want to change history just because the rules change now, but that's not how it was. But I will say this, and I know you've always been, well, you've kind of changed a little bit on this in terms of rule changes and history changes, but you may still not change your opinion on this. Everybody knows what steroids did to baseball, right? Everybody knows. Do you feel like we're basically ignoring baseball by discouraging Bonds, discouraging Schilling, discouraging Sosa, discouraging all these guys from
McGuire,
McGuire, the list goes on and on, but discouraging these guys from basically saving the game. But they broke the rule on steroids, and some of those guys won't get a gold jacket or whatever the color is for baseball. Because of that, does that seem at this point in time, with everyone knowing what steroids did, I'm not saying it's fair, but knowing what it did, does that seem to change your thoughts on who should be in and who shouldn't? Because Pete Rose had to die before MLB changed their.
I don't think he's still in, does he? Is he?
I don't know.
I don't think he is. I'll check it out real quick.
He may not be, but they definitely lightened their hearted stance on Pete Rose. So Pete Rose had to die. Well, let's be honest. Pete Rose had to die before the MLB felt sorry for him. So it kind of seems like. And maybe this is an MLB thing, I don't know, but it just kind of seems like the MLB holds a lot more grudges than they should. I don't know how you feel about that, but it just kind of seems like they hold a lot more grudges than any league. I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that the baseball purist, mentality is what holds that. So Pete Rose is not in the Hall of Fame, but he is now eligible for enshrinement. So how I used to think about it was McGuire and Sosa, they brought baseball back in '98. They had the home run race, really brought back the popularity of baseball after the strike in '94. And I always thought those two should be exempt because they brought baseball back. However they did it, we don't got to talk about it, but they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. What changed my mind over the last, I don't know, maybe decade is hearing somebody say Hall of Fames tell your sports story, from start to finish, right? So we're going to ignore a whole era of the history of this game, because you got to think about it further, and baseball is the one that you can really do that with and see already. Most leagues, I feel like, haven't been around long enough or on the level baseball has. I mean, the Cardinals were established in the 1880s. So I don't think that any other sport can have the perspective that we have of baseball, to where like guys like Honus Wagner or guys like even Shoeless Joe Jackson, where I do think that, done a very good job of telling his story and knowing his story throughout time. But at the same time, think about it another 150 years down the road. Do kids know who Barry Bonds is? Probably Bonds, because he holds the home run record. Are they going to remember that he was the poster boy for steroids? Maybe. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, do kids these days, I mean, I know we're already, the next generation, but do kids these days, if I went and asked a 12-year-old Little Leaguer, do you know why? Do you know about Shoeless Joe Jackson and why he was banned from the game? Maybe they know, maybe they don't. I'm not 100% sure. But then 150 years, do they know who Roger Clemens is? Do they know who, some of these guys that were very impactful for that time period, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, some of those guys that don't have the same accolades? Because at this point, I mean, Mark McGwire has no accolade that holds anymore. He wasn't, part of that home run club. He didn't get to 700. And his record was beaten in a single season by Bonds. So there's really nothing to hold him or tie him to historic value, I don't think, at this point. But, I don't know. I think the steroid-era guys deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, no matter what. However you want to do it, I don't think, again, in 150 years that people are going to care as much when we probably have AI robots playing in the same league with humans. I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens. But, I think when I got it explained that way, or heard somebody explain it that way, the Hall of Fame tells the story of the game. That's when I kind of changed because it's a different way of looking at it. It's like, oh, this guy cheated, so he doesn't deserve to be in. And it's like, well, he still had an impact. Bonds had an impact on the game. Clemens had an impact on the game. McGwire, Sosa, Schilling. No matter how much of an asshole, any of those guys were. I've heard stories about every single one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? What's your take on that?
I feel like I'm with you. It just kind of seems like if you're going to include history, you got to tell the whole story.
Yeah.
And baseball, I don't think, would be anywhere the same romantical story if we didn't tell the Bond story. I mean, watching that whole run that year was on every news channel. Barry Bonds hits another one. Barry Bonds hits another one. When he got closer and closer and closer, and when he hit, what did he end up hitting? What did he end up hitting?
73, I think it was.
73. Yeah, I mean, 73 home runs in a year. First of all, that's fucking ridiculous, okay? I mean, 73 home runs in 1 year. I mean, Cal Raleigh hit 62 or 63, and that was ridiculous, especially for a catcher. But Barry Bonds hit 10 more than that, so keep that in mind. It's just that's something that should never be forgotten, in the game of baseball. And also keep in mind, Barry Bonds was a hell of an athlete for a long time.
Well, and Barry Bonds great before steroids, yes, absolutely.
Right. Well, he had that too. Yes, he was. But he was a 30-30 guy every year.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think people realize that. Barry Bonds was fast.
Yeah.
He stole bases all the time. He still hit home runs even without steroids, and he was a phenomenal outfielder. So, I mean, there's a lot about Barry Bonds that was honestly great for the game because he was a great baseball player outside of, then he decided to gain 100 pounds and, his head got smaller, but whatever. But, at the end of the day, I don't think you can ignore what Barry Bonds did. And I don't think you can ignore what a lot of these guys did, outside of Jose Canseco. But, I mean, all these guys are a huge part of what baseball is. But now, baseball has just kind of become the analytical game. It's not really, looking for the power or anything like that. So, if you're gonna set up history, at least make it to where you know where you came from, and not where you're at.
I agree.
Let's see.
So I
Any
have something
final
to spin
thoughts?
off of this because
Yeah, there you
we'll
go.
finish up the card. Marab is unbeatable, pretty much, is what we've seen. Marab
Yeah.
Dvalishvili. He beats Sandhagen, and that was a weird fight to me. I feel like Sandhagen should have done more to not get controlled by Marab. I also thought it was weird that Marab really didn't feel like he tried to finish the fight at all. It seemed like he was very comfortable with just getting, clinched up and throwing Sandhagen to the ground and letting him immediately get back up and just throw him back to the ground. And we saw that cycle for about 25 minutes. So, I don't know. It was a weird fight, but I think Marab is just levels ahead of everyone else. And then Yuri Prohashka with an absolutely insane win over Khalil Roundtree. Did not see that one coming. I had Khalil Roundtree winning that fight for sure. And Yuri just is absolutely insane. So then, to spin off of that, to kind of go with what we were talking about of, some of the athletes that, we look at in a different light later on. The word on the street is that Conor McGregor has been suspended by whatever body sanctions everything. It's not USADA anymore, but Conor McGregor has been suspended. And I'm going to pull that up right now because I don't actually know what it was for. Obviously, we're probably looking at either steroids or coke based off of what we've seen out of Conor McGregor over the last suspended 18 months under UFC anti-doping policy. Now, where this is or if this is, just started. Okay, McGregor missed 3 testing samples within a 12-month window on the dates of June 13th, September 19th, September 20th, 2024. McGregor, who's 37 currently now, was initially set up to be suspended for 24 months until further cooperation prompted a reduction down to 18 months, the UFC stated. His suspension is retroactive to the final test missed, meaning he won't be eligible to return to competition until March 20th, 2026, which, let me double check this one now, because I feel like they just came out with a date for the UFC White House card. And I don't know where that lines up with. I think that is going to put him right on time to fight at this event, which is June 14th of 2026. So that means Conor McGregor will come off of his suspension in March and eligible to fight in June against Michael Chandler on the White House card. What are your thoughts, EDJ, on Mr. Conor McGregor?
I just feel like all of these guys, and this goes for multiple sports, not just UFC or MMA. It just feels like the older guys are trying so hard to stay around and stay relevant. And Conor McGregor is making money hand over fist, elsewhere. So he's not strapped for cash. I just don't really understand it. And I understand the rules and that he broke them, but I just don't understand the older guys' ability to want to keep doing what they're doing. It's just kind of like, oh, I'm good. I'm 37, I'm 38. I don't want to get kicked in the head or punched in the face anymore, man. I'm done. Especially after the injury that he took in the, in the octagon, and it was brutal in its own right. It's just, I'd be good. I'm done. I make money elsewhere. Probably make more money now than I have. I'm good. I don't need to do this anymore. But some people just have that bug. They feel like they have to do it. And I think the White House card is intriguing to a lot of fighters, and I think they want to be on it. And you could always say, well, I fought in the White House lawn. It's just, I think it's something that fighters want to say and do.
Yeah,
so,
I think it's definitely something cool. And the renderings, did you see the renderings of it?
I haven't yet,
It
no.
looks pretty cool. It looks pretty cool.
So I think it's just, I guess I understand him wanting to do this fight, but at the same time, it's kind of like, you don't really need to, dude. You're 37 or however old you are now. Just ride your massive yacht and ride up the sunset. Call it a day.
I'll actually say I don't think he wants to. I don't think he wants to do any of it.
You don't think he does?
I think it's his character. I think that he is a pro wrestler essentially that became his character.
Yeah.
I think to a point for Conor McGregor, And I don't look. I get the itch to always want to fight, just for the simple fact that look, I may have only fought amateurly, but there will forever be a part of me that wants to just get in the ring and fight. I want to go straight into a training camp for 6 to 8 weeks and go have a fight. But realistically, I don't want that. I don't want to get in there and get roughed up for 8 weeks and cut weight and all the other things that go behind it. It's getting in the cage and doing it and hearing the crowd. Because, I fought in front of a couple of hundred people at most. And I couldn't imagine fighting in front of 20,000 people and what that feels like. And, the energy that you get from that and all the fun stuff, right? But that's what we want. As fighters, we want the fun part. We don't want the nagging injury in training camp that, I don't know if I'm going to be able to throw my right hand in this fight, and I'm, compromised going into this fight, and yada, 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 the list goes on. And I think Conor wants to party. Constantly now, Conor is, angling for a BKFC fight. He was angling for that over the weekend with Mike Perry. He's helping run BKFC. I think that he is, at the end of the day, I think he's coked out of his mind. And I don't think that, this is my real question. I don't think that he ever fights again. Do you think he ever fights again? I don't think that he makes it to this White House card. And if he does, I don't think it's going to be a good time for him.
No, I think this will probably end it for him. I think he'll decide that he's done. And I think you're right. I think it is a bit of a character work. And again, I think that falls into a lot of these guys. A lot of these guys have an image, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of who they're supposed to be, and this and that and this and that, and they're just. If you're to a point to where you're deciding, do I make an extra $300,000 getting punched in the face, or do I make an extra $300,000 not doing that? Probably don't do it. So, and I think he obviously showing that he didn't do the testing like he's supposed to. I think that kind of shows that, oh, shoot, I guess I'm in trouble. I don't think he gives a shit anymore. And I don't blame him. I would be done if I were him. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's very convenient that he comes off suspension right before that White House card.
Mm-hmm. One last thing, and we've talked about this on and off. Cena's towards the end of his retirement tour, whatever you want to call it. Do you think they throw Edge in there? Do you think they get a deal done with Khan to where they can throw Edge in there? It just seems wrong to not have Edge be, if not his last opponent, one of his last opponents. It just kind of seems. It doesn't seem like he should retire without it. I don't know. And I think, Adam Copeland or whatever you want to call him is very happy with AEW, and I think he's happy with he doesn't have to wrestle very much. He makes a lot of money. But it just kind of seems like there has to be a deal done to where they get a one-off, and if it's not even in, I think it has to, I don't know. But to me, it just seems like that's the match. We're getting Cena versus Styles. That's another thing this weekend is Crown Jewel Perth is this weekend as well, if you're a wrestling fan. But it just kind of seems like if we're going to end the story, at least end it with those two guys, you would think.
100%, I think they get a deal done. I absolutely do. I think that's Cena's last match. I think that we'll have a good match this weekend with him and AJ Styles. I think this is one of the matches he wants to put on. And I think Edge wants to, or Adam Copeland, whatever you know him as, the rated R superstar. I think that absolutely they get a deal done. I think that we saw it from Edge that night, whatever pay-per-view it was. Shout out to my AEW fans because I don't watch AEW at all, and I haven't really watched much of All Friends of Wrestling over the last couple of years, so I don't really know what's going on over there. They started stabbing people, and I was kind of like, I think I'm good on watching this product. But anyways, you saw him do the 5-knuckle shuffle at an AEW event, giving that ode to John Cena, and I think he even pulled out an AA in that sequence, so he did the John Cena sequence. So, yeah, I think that, at the end of the day, like, some of the stuff is bigger than the AEW versus WWE kind of stuff, and especially guys that have experienced that. Edge spent his whole career with WWE. for the most part in this final little run. Whether it's a one-off or because and if I'm wrong, I might be wrong, but I think that Edge only has like a month left on his contract with AEW. So there is an opportunity there. And I think that they get a deal done. Yeah, like I said, whether it's a one-off or Edge comes back for his final run, I think either way they get something done, and this is the final match. Oh, you're muted.
I hope so. It just kind of seems like that's where you would want it to go. So, I mean, like we talked about, there's a lot of fun things. It just seems like every weekend for the past month and a half, there's been something that you can watch. So, lots of fun stuff to watch, lots of fun stuff to do. Final prediction for Monday night?
I was just about to say, I'm going to put you on the hot seat before we get out of here. We got 2 predictions to get out of the way. 11 a.m. Saturday morning. MIZZOU Bama. What's your final score, EJ?
I'm going to go 2017. I think this is going to be a tough one, but I think they eke it out to the end. I'm going to give them 2017 on that one.
Okay. I'm going to go similar with you on this one. I'm going to say MIZZOU gets it done 23-17. They eke out one more field goal. I think they go in that last drive, and they have to put a touchdown on the board. And I think they get a touchdown, and then the defense stifles Bama to end the game, and we see Bo Perbula kneel down. Final score 23-17. Sunday night. 7 p.m. Sunday Night Football. Chiefs, Lions. What's your final prediction?
I wouldn't be saying it if I feel like they couldn't do it, but I think they can now. I think it'll be 33-30. I think it'll be one of those wild games that we've seen in years past. I don't find the Lions defense horrendously reliable. I think it'll be a fun one to watch. I think it'll be another close one. And keep in mind, Chiefs have lost 3 games, all of them by 1 possession, all of them to good teams. So, I think this will be another close game. I think they get this one finally. I think it'll be 33-30. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
I'm with you. I got the Chiefs winning. Whole scenario. Jared Goff, he has the ball. Tie game, 24-24. Late in the game, Lions can take points, or they can go for it on a 4th and 5. They go for it. Spags dials up the perfect blitz. Incompletion. Chiefs drive down the field about, we'll say 35 yards. Get Harrison Butker into field goal range. Knocks it through the uprights. 27-24. Kansas City Chiefs win on Sunday Night Football. Get back to 500. That'll be my prediction there.
I was going to say, if you're going to say the Lions are going to punt, you're wrong. But,
exactly.
Yeah.
No, I think what I was getting at, I think they'll be in field goal range, and that's what we're going to talk about. They got a 4th and medium going for it. They're going to go for it instead of taking the points and giving Mahomes like a minute left on the clock with 3 timeouts. They go for it. Spags dials up the perfect pressure. Say Trent McDuffie and Nick Bolton get there to hit Goff. Throws an incompletion. Mahomes works his magic, gets Butker into field goal range, and the Chiefs, we ride out of Arrowhead 27-24. So I do plan on trying to go live before that game in the parking lot again. So if you are available there, EDJ, always welcome to hop on. I appreciate you joining me for this lengthy podcast that we went on some real tangents. It was great. I thought talking about the Baseball Hall of Fame and stuff. Which I think it's more impressive how we got from the main event of UFC 320 all the way to talking about steroid-era Hall of Fame. I think that's really just impressive range that we have as a tandem here.
Well, it's how we do it. Real quick. This is going to matter to anybody but Kansas City folks. Frank White, do you think his number gets unretired if they move?
Unretired?
Unretired. There's a lot of people that feel like he'll get unretired.
Why? Just because
for those who don't know, Frank White joined the Kansas City political scene. Mm-hmm. A lot of people very unhappy with what he's done as a politician.
Yeah, he got recalled, right?
Feel like, a lot of people feel like once he gets moved, or once the Royals, if or when the Royals move, probably win, They want to retire his number, retire Salvy's, and potentially Gordon's, and unretire Frank White. What do you think?
Oh, that is tough, man. I don't like the thought of, and this may be a personal thing for me because me and Ray were kind of having conversations about different athletes and things like that, and I feel like we had this discussion on the Showbank show years ago about separating artists from the art, and I think that I think it's easy for me to separate the player from the person, right? Which I don't even know if we should be having this conversation, but I'll just go there with it. I was a huge Aaron Hernandez fan personally. I loved Aaron Hernandez at Florida. I thought
well, folks, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you.
I thought he was a great football player. Aaron Hernandez was a terrible person. I mean, it's not like I go back and I'm like, oh man, Hernandez is my favorite tight end of all time or anything like that. But I guess I have to go to the extreme to, make my point that I'm making of just, I don't like the thought of unretiring someone's number because of their political affiliations post-career, but I mean, I don't know. If the organization feels like it was that bad, and I don't know, honestly, anything about Frank White's politics or his political career. I just have seen it in the headlines that he's getting recalled, so I don't know. I guess maybe you mess up enough people's lives. Yeah, recall that number.
Well, I think the issue that the Royals have with him now and what Royals fans and what Kansas City has with him is that he botched the stadium vote terribly.
Right.
He went out and just didn't describe it well. It just kind of seemed like he was trying to steal our money. Whoever was voting for our money, because only the county that's it in is votes for it. But it just seemed like he botched it, and he didn't really seem sympathetic or empathetic towards him doing that. He came out, and just kind of basically, it's like, well, all right, so whatever. I just thought that was interesting. I heard that on the radio the other day. I thought that was interesting, but
I could see that, especially if the team has some type of vendetta against him too, because at the end of the day, like, yeah, you're in a political position, but this is the team that this is what you come from. Like that's like turning down. I don't know. If you bought something really big for the team like that, I mean, maybe, which. I personally have always, and I've said this on this podcast many times, that I think that it's a lot of tension behind the scenes between a lot of people when it comes to like Chiefs Royals. I think the Chiefs want the Royals out. I think that's really all it comes down to. I don't think the Royals, I won't say that they don't care about getting a new stadium, but I don't think that was necessarily on the top of their list going into all of this. But I think Clark Hunt is very much trying to strike while the iron's hot with the Chiefs dynasty. And he wants to get the Royals out of there and build up Arrowhead into, a nicer area facility. I don't know, but you understand what I'm getting at. And so I think that maybe, there, between all of that, there's tension between the Chiefs, Royals, and Frank White now being, part of the political problem essentially. So I mean, I could see that. I could see that from a team standpoint of wanting to, okay, let's not honor this guy that just screwed us out of a new stadium or. Something like that, or we feel like he dropped the ball on us getting that new stadium. So I do kind of get that to a point. I think Salvy is a guy you have to retire his number. Gordon, I could understand. But one thing I'll push back on Gordon, because not that I didn't like Gordon. I love Gordon as a player. I think he was awesome. But how impactful is Alex Gordon versus a Mike Sweeney? Do you think a Mike Sweeney would deserve to have his jersey retired over Gordon? I do understand that Gordon went and won World Series and Sweeney didn't, but I feel like Sweeney I just always remember Sweeney was the dude for the Royals.
He was, and Mike Sweeney was my favorite growing up, but he was, but I think if you look at from a franchise standpoint, what Gordon came from to where he ended up being.
Yeah.
Mike Sweeney was always a first baseman, I think, and he was always considered a pretty dang good first baseman.
He came up as a catcher, actually.
Catcher, that's right.
Yep.
That's right. You're right. But, once Sweeney went to first base, he was, a first baseman. I think the struggle with Gordon to start his career at third base, as an infielder, and, trying to figure that out, and then moving to left field. I think the story for Gordon is a little bit better. And, I guess Sweeney stuck through some terrible teams too. But, it just kind of seems like, at least with Gordon, he truly never left. I think Mike Sweeney played a year or two somewhere else. Maybe, I can't remember. Oakland. But, Gordon never left.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, at the end of the day, it boils down to. And I'm sure it wasn't Mike's decision, but, at the end of the day, Gordon was never traded. He never left. He never went somewhere else for more money. He always stayed put. And I think that's where you get your number retired. If you have so many platinum gloves and gold gloves and whatever you want to call it, accolades on top of it, and you stayed with the whole team. So I think that's where you would get the nod over Sweeney. But I think Sweeney's pretty highly regarded, in the Royals franchise. I mean, he's a big, private guy in the organization, so he's definitely honored. But I don't know if he'll ever get his number retired. I don't think he had the exact same impact. Yes, he is. Oh, yeah.
So, I think that's good enough. And I think you're right. Although, I would also then argue that the Royals maybe would have kept going if they didn't pay him there at the end. I've always thought that was the wrong guy to pay, which, it is what it is. And I do agree with you, though. Hey, you have convinced me. Alex Gordon over Mike Sweeney, all-time Royals-wise, and he deserves to have that number retired, probably. You're probably right. I mean, I remember his struggles at third base, and he had that arc, you know what I mean, where Sweeney, he had an arc as a player, but, to see Gordon's transpire at the same time that the Royals had their arc of winning the World Series, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, he was absolutely what's the word? Just like a stronghold in the organization that really held it down for the Royals and ended up being a huge, impact on the Royals winning the World Series. So their second World Series in 2015. With that being said, we have covered a lot there, EDJ. 90 minutes in our return. I greatly appreciate you coming on to the pod. I think the people greatly appreciate you coming on to the pod too, instead of just listening to me ramble by myself. It's always great to have another rambler to ramble with on and on forth. So I'm looking forward to this weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun weekend and a lot of fun stuff, and it's always a good time, and we'll ramble again.
Indeed. All right, well, until next time, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you are not subscribed already, especially if you listen to an hour and a half of us talk. You should definitely subscribe because there will be more. Hit that notification bell to stay notified as well, and like the podcast if you're still here. Until next time, EDJ, Papa Shro, we're out of here.